Tonight, we are speaking about infatuation. Now, when I say the word infatuation, think about what your definition is. Coming into this room tonight, you have a definition, a preconceived idea of what infatuation is. So whenever we try to learn something new, whenever we go through a new experience, we have to start with what we already know. So ask yourself, what do I already know about infatuation? Some of you may be very well versed. If you've studied psychology or any kind of social sciences, you probably have used this word many times. Some of you may only have heard of the word. Some of you may know it from searching it up on the web. So just kind of analyze for yourself, where are you coming from? How are you starting off tonight? What does the word infatuation mean to you? And that is going to be a starting point for you for this journey over the next 50 minutes or so. Infatuation is that intense, almost chemical connection that you feel. It's sudden, and it usually catches you off guard. When you're infatuated, you don't have an appetite. You can't sleep. You find yourself making foolish choices and unable to act rationally. Infatuation will feel good to you in the moment, but it's not based on anything real. It's actually filled with illusion. So, for the past 10 years, I've been setting up a lot of dates. And when I set up a date, I almost expect that at first, the two people that I'm setting up are going to be infatuated. The fact is that, especially in the beginning, it's so awkward, and there's no way to unawkwardize, if that's a word, to unawkwardize, even if it isn't, I like it. That first interaction, it's just strange. And that's why often, if people are dating, I say you should really give it a second try, because that first interaction is so strange, and there's no way to make it not strange. It's just going to be strange no matter which way you look at it, no matter how you deal with it. So in the beginning of the relationship, especially when two people are set up on a blind date, or they're set up through a shidduch, or they're set up through some kind of process where they didn't just randomly meet, or even if they did just randomly meet, we need something that's going to keep the relationship alive in the beginning. And infatuation is usually it. Infatuation is so powerful that it can completely take you over, because what it does is it touches on a deep human need, the need for connection. The need for connection. Connection that is true and long-lasting connection. The kind of connection that we want people to develop through relationship is something that is going to develop over time. It's going to take a while for that connection, for that synergy to really work. So infatuation becomes this instant gratification. It feels good in the moment. It's when you hear them, oh, we're in love, and it's so amazing. It's wonderful. It's great. But remember, easy come, easy go. If you want a relationship that lasts for 2 hours, infatuation is the way to go. mean, romantic comedies, the movies are filled with infatuation and they're 2 hours long. So if you want a relationship like the movies, that's definitely the way to go. And I think that what happened in our society is we, as a society, have set people up for infatuated relationships. Because most people, once they meet, first of all, meeting already, like I said before, is so awkward. But then once they meet, they don't know what to do next. Okay, we met. What do? Oh, let's go to a movie. In the secular world, at least. Well, that's not a good idea. That's not going to develop relationship. That's not at least do a shared experience. Do something together. That's a shared experience. That will develop a certain sense of relationship. Or have a go to a space when you're initially dating that you can have a deep and meaningful conversation, develop those feelings. And so what ends up happening is what is supposed to be infatuation for 20 minutes or an hour, or maybe the first half of a first date, just to keep that instant gratification or that feeling working, what ends up happening is most people continue that infatuation throughout the relationship. It's just a continuous first date because they never get past the first stage of the dating process. So if you want a relationship that is easy come, easy go, then I recommend infatuated relationships. Now, in order to get the long-lasting type of relationship, we need to do something tonight that I think is imperative. We have to identify what exactly infatuation is, because if we don't know what it is, there's no way for us to fix it. There's no way for us to know that we're doing something right or wrong. So we need to be able to see through the illusion of infatuation and feel something beyond that. So over the years, and again, this is a lot of my own experience, I've identified 6 types of infatuation that have come up in the couples that I have set up in relationship talks, in my conversations with couples. So they are the following, and I'm going to go through each of them tonight. Effortless, image-oriented, temporary, controlled by imagination, selfish, and then number 6 is an infatuation that promotes insecurity. And I'm going to go through each one of these 6 types of infatuation. So let's start off with number 1, effortless infatuation. The essential element of infatuation is that it's effortless. This feeling of effortlessness is one of the reasons that it's so addictive. You don't have to work for it. By the way, people who have a tendency to be addicts, people who are intense, who are addicted to things, they naturally go towards infatuation because they have the addictive gene. So infatuation is addictive. You don't have to work for it. It's completely passive. Infatuation doesn't begin with a conscious decision like, oh, he's cute. My parents are going to love him. I think I'll be infatuated with him. Though I think that life would be much easier if that is how it went. Infatuation sneaks up when you least expect it. And strangely enough, infatuation happens more often than not with the guy or the girl that your parents wouldn't like, who wouldn't be accepted by your family. As a matter of fact, sometimes you don't even like the person that you're infatuated with. Ever think about that one? So if you think about infatuation and what it is, can you imagine that sometimes we can be infatuated with someone? We can think that we're in love with them, but we don't even like them. Now, there are many theories as to why you might be attracted to a particular person. Is it just desire? Is it that you desire that person? Why would someone be attracted to someone else? There was actually a theory that I had heard years ago that there are some people who emit heightened levels of electromagnetic energy, and that makes them attractive, literally like a magnet attractive. But when you desire someone, especially for a relationship, why might you be attracted to that person? And I think it's really important to ask yourself that question. What attracts me to one person over another? Now, remember, it's an emotion, and we don't have a brain in our heart. So we're analyzing emotions, but that's really complicated because it's very, very difficult to analyze emotions. But we have to start somewhere. So if we start by asking ourselves, what attracts me to a particular person? Think about someone, if you've had someone that you've been attracted to before, ask yourself, why am I attracted to that person? Does it remind me of my mother or father or my grandparents? Does it remind me of somebody I like? Is it familiar to me? Usually, it's funny, they always say opposites attract. It's not true. We're all opposite by nature. Men and women aren't opposite by nature. Opposites don't need to attract. What you're looking for in a relationship is actually someone who's complementary. So it's what's going to be attractive to you is probably going to be similarities, not opposites. It's similarities. It's familiar things that are going to be attractive. They're going to trigger certain feelings within you that are going to allow you to connect to something that is deeply meaningful to you or special or different. So ask yourself, what am I attracted to? Next. I'm sure you've heard of this book. It's probably one of the most famous books in the United States on relationships. It was written by Dr. Harville Hendrix, and it's called Getting the Love You Want. I don't recommend the book for a lot of reasons, but I do like this quote from it. He says in the book that infatuation occurs because you have some unfinished business from your childhood, which seems to correlate to the issues of the person you like. So whatever the case, it's clear that you can have feelings of attraction for someone you don't respect, for someone that you don't want to have chemistry with. Whether or not it stems from some unfinished business in your childhood, it's certainly extremely familiar to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so deeply attracted to it. Nothing makes any sense about this type of relationship. Yet the feelings are so strong. The feelings are so compelling that it's hard to walk away. That is effortless. There's nothing you can do. It just happens to you. It's passive. Infatuation is effortless. Number 2, the second type of infatuation is image-oriented. Infatuation is very image-oriented. When you're infatuated, you can get caught up with who you think the person is, or more precisely, what you want them to be. So you start creating an image of who this person is in your mind. It may be true and it may not be true, but you decided that this is the person who you're quote unquote in a relationship with. Or I know, and I'm sorry I have to generalize for the sake of this class, I have no choice but to generalize. But it's more often with women than with men that they like to look for a fixer-upper. They like to look, that's what I call it at least, a fixer-upper, for someone who they see potential in, that they can shape, that they can mold. And men also have it, but I find it, in my experience, a little more common with women. And so that is a form of infatuation. It's an image-oriented infatuation, that you have an image of the person you want them to be. And you start creating this image in your mind, and as a result, you become infatuated with that version of the person which actually doesn't even exist, because it's only the version of the person that you want them to be, not who they are. So often you're able to create this fantasy-like image of the person. The image you create could not be further from who that person really is. But it's not going to stop you from convincing yourself that he or she is God's gift to humanity. And the spell is often broken when you start actually learning more about the person. But until then, you're able to remain in a state of ecstasy, or maybe we should say imagine ecstasy. So this image-oriented infatuation looks like this version of a person who we think we can change. But I want to make it very clear that the person you're going to marry, or the person you've married if you're already in a relationship, they're not changeable. You can't be in a relationship with someone thinking about the person they're going to be or the person you want them to be. That's infatuation. We have to be able to accept the person for who they are today. And that happens very often with religious differences, with a lot of other differences. And we can get to that in the second half of tonight's session when we go through the questions and answers. We can get through, if you remind me, I can go through that. The third type of infatuation I call temporary. So simply, infatuation is short-lived. There's a book called The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm. I don't recommend it, but I recommend one paragraph from it. I'd like to read it to you. I put it in your handout tonight, but I'll read it because I think that it's very powerful when it comes to infatuation. He has a very good description. He says, if two people who have been strangers, as all of us are, suddenly let the wall between them break down and feel close, feel one, this moment of oneness is one of the most exhilarating, most exciting experiences in life. It is all the more wonderful, miraculous for persons who have been shut off, isolated, without love. However, this type of love is by its very nature not lasting. Two persons become well acquainted. Their intimacy loses more and more its miraculous character until their antagonism, their disappointments, their mutual boredom kill whatever is left of the initial excitement. Yet in the beginning, they do not know all this. In fact, they take the intensity of the infatuation, this being quote unquote crazy about each other, for proof of the intensity of their love, while it may only prove the degree of their preceding loneliness. Question mark. So, couples who are infatuated with each other, they often confuse love and lust. Love, I would suggest, is about giving. We want to give our love to another. And when we do, we receive love in return. Now, it's not tit for tat. We're not giving in order to receive. We're giving 100%. And in return, what happens to be that it takes two to be in a relationship, so the other person gives in return. That's what a relationship is. It is give and take, but we don't give in order to receive. That's what love is. Love is being able to give to another. Lust, on the other hand, is about having our own needs fulfilled. It's just about, what am I going to get out of this relationship? If you're going into a relationship asking yourself, what am I going to get out of it? Don't even start. The answer is you're going to get nothing out of it. You're going to be your own self-fulfilling prophet because the person is never going to be able to live up to the expectation that you want. But if you lust them, then the infatuation kind of takes over to a certain extent for a short period of time. That's why I call this infatuation temporary, because it's really temporary. So when he loves her, he wants to make her happy. When he lusts after her, he just wants to make himself happy at her expense. Love is the supreme expression. Love, the proper definition of love, is the supreme expression of selflessness. Lust is the absolute essence of selfishness. Love is the highest acknowledgement of her individuality. Lust is going to be a supreme denial of her individuality. Love is about recognizing the humanity in the one that we love. And lust is about turning her into an object. Love is going to animate our lives. It's going to move our lives forward. Lust is going to make the animate inanimate because it's passive. Love is active. Lust is passive. Love is specific. Lust is indiscriminate. Most of all, love can last a lifetime. Lust is going to last a moment, or until something better comes along to satisfy our selfish needs. So how long might this temporary infatuation last? An hour? A day? Sometimes it's going to last until the object of your infatuation opens their mouth. Actually, some social scientists say 6 to 8 months is the average lifespan of infatuation. And that's why we see in relationships that 6 to 8 months generally is a turning point in the relationship. There's an author named Helen Fisher. She wrote a book called The Anatomy of Love. And she writes there that, just a quote from her, that alas, that infatuation fades, and at some point that magic wanes. Yet, there seems to be a good general length to this condition. And she quotes the psychologist Dorothy Tenev, who measured the duration of romantic love from the moment infatuation hit to when a feeling of neutrality for one's love object began. And she concluded that the most frequent interval, as well as the average, is between 18 months to 3 years, which fascinatingly is the average time when divorce happens. Most divorces are happening between 18 months and 3 years. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's well over 50% of divorces now are happening. Well over 50% of couples are getting divorced, but well over 50% of the divorces are happening between 18 and 3 years. And Fisher also draws this parallel between the 3-year maximum and the fact that divorce is so common during that time, between 18 months and 3 years. She says in her study that, hoping to get some insight into the nature of divorce, I turned to the demographic yearbooks of the United Nations. And she writes that divorce generally occurs early in marriage, peaking in or around the 4th year after the wedding, followed by a gradual decline in divorce as more years of marriage go by. And she says that the American divorce peak is somewhat lower than its 4-year peak. And it could be connected to the American instant gratification society. It's interesting. I don't know if it's a fact. I mean, it's the only study that I found of this nature, and it's a pretty well charged study. It's very well backed up with data. And it wasn't just, I don't look at these studies that are just, 25 couples. I like to look at studies that are, thousands and thousands of couples to get a good idea of what's going on. But I think whatever the reason, it's clear that infatuation has proven itself to be a weak an undependable element in assessing the potential of a relationship. So if you're planning on, if infatuation is the reason you got into the relationship, you have to make sure that it wanes off very quickly. Number four. So we went through effortless, we went through image-oriented, we went through temporary. Number four is controlled by imagination. Now, the fourth element of infatuation is the unleashing of the imagination through obsessive daydreams and fantasies. You find yourself replaying pictures and scenes in your head. The daydreams are often about someone completely unattainable. This is not even someone that you could ever be in a relationship with. Some people experience what I call a fantastical roller coaster ride. It feels really good, but it also feels scary to be out of touch with reality. The fantasies take over, and you become aware that you've left reality behind completely. This loss of touch with reality is precisely one of the prices that you pay for infatuation. You're not controlling your imagination. Rather, your imagination is controlling you. And at moments such as these, people almost feel enslaved. They feel like, am I in a relationship with myself? Now, it also makes them, as a result of that, if you spent years and years having these daydreams and fantasies, then it could make you desire something that is completely unattainable. It can make you desire a person who you'll never be able to get. Now, let's talk about that, unattainable relationships. I'm not talking about, I know that in the world they say they use numbers from 1 to 10. Forget about that. What you're looking for in a partner is someone who's complementary to you. So if you're looking for someone who you can't be in a relationship with, then what's the point of looking for that person? It's someone who is not your complement. You're trying to find someone who's out of reach. It's not out of reach in a way that, in a physical attractive way. It's out of reach in the fact that they are unattainable to you because they're not your complement. They're not the complement of your soul. And that is the kind of person you're looking for. You're looking for someone who's the complement of you. Love, real, true love, is rooted in knowing rather than imagining. Love is not lost in fantasy. It can take a step back. Love is able to evaluate itself. Love is able to see the bigger picture. And there is an element of infatuation, like I said in the beginning of tonight's class. There is an element of infatuation in the beginning of love. Yet, you could have some imagination. You could have some daydreaming. You can have some butterflies in your stomach and some difficulty sleeping. But you're not out of control. You're able to think clearly for the most part. You can see the other person's faults. You can logically explain on some level the basis for his or her feelings. You can act responsibly. So we're not worried about this particular person in the beginning of the relationship. It's just a moment. It's a momentary infatuation. But if you continue having this infatuation, or if you're someone who if you are someone who has had a lot of daydreams about different people, you have to just stop a second and ask yourself, do I really know what I'm looking for? Am I realistic with the person that is going to be the complement of myself? Because even if you score, so to speak, you may not want to live with that person. Our entire society is set up for first dates, for interactions, for meetings. We're not talking here about first dates and meetings and interactions. We're talking here about someone who is the forever type. And so you want to find someone who can match you in the forever type. So it's only to your benefit that you're realistic about the person that you want and the person you're going to date. So now we did effortless, we did image-oriented, we did temporary, we just did controlled by imagination, and number 5 is selfish. Another aspect of infatuation is that it has a selfish nature. Infatuation is about how you make me feel. It's about us thinking, I want to feel a certain way. I want to feel that way when I'm with you. It's completely self-centered. Sure, I feel like giving when I'm infatuated. But if I'm to be honest with myself, that giving could possibly be self-serving. And really what we're thinking is, I'll give as long as I get something in return, as long as it all comes back to me. I mean, imagine walking through a rose garden and admiring a particular rose. Would you say, I love this rose? Do you see this rose? I love it. And then you pluck it. What do you mean? You love it? You just killed that rose. Wanting something for me on my terms has nothing to do with love. There's a very famous parable about the Baron and the pike, that the fisherman caught a pike, and the pike was caught, and it was thinking, my gosh, the fisherman catches it, looks at the pike, who's flapping out of the water, and the fisherman says, the Baron is gonna loves pike. I'm gonna bring it to the Baron. And the pike is like, wow, oh my gosh, the Baron loves me. Okay, there's hope for me just yet. And he goes to the guards and he sees the guards at the gate and he says, look at this pike, the Baron loves pike. And he's been out of the water, the pike, so he's trying to catch his breath. And he's like, oh, and the guards say, yes, the Baron, he loves pike. So the fish is thinking to himself, okay, I have hope. They bring the pike to the chef, and the chef says, wow, what a beautiful pike. The Baron loves pike. Then they lay it on the counter, and in walks the Baron. And the Baron says, slice it this way, and slice it this way, and slice it that way. And with its last breath, the pike says, you don't love pike, you love yourself. And that's the parable. And how often do we say, oh, I love this, I love that? You don't love ice cream. You love the way that ice cream makes you feel the moment you're eating it. Afterwards, it's a different story. But the moment that you're eating the ice cream, you like it. The moment so many things that we say that we love, we use that term love for, are not things that we really love. They're things that make us feel good. So love is all about giving. It's an ongoing concern with another, regardless of how that person makes us feel. It's about learning to get out of ourselves, out of our narcissism, and focus on another person who's outside of us. As the saying goes, love is about learning to spell us with a capital U, or learning to turn me upside down into we. The real secret about selfishness, of infatuation, is that when you're infatuated, you're not only infatuated with the object of your infatuation. In a strange way, you're also infatuated with yourself, or maybe primarily you're infatuated with yourself. If you think about it, you're going to notice that when you're infatuated, you're seeing yourself through the other person's eyes, because the person you're dating looks at you adoringly and you feel adorable. When he or she thinks that you're smart, you feel smart. And this creates this strange dependence and insecurity that tomorrow, maybe they're not going to find me quote unquote adorable or smart. because of this possible loss of the person seeing you as smart, you may no longer feel smart on your own. And once again, here it is. It kind of is this mirror. It comes back to me. It's like a whale that uses sonar to bounce its sonar off of nearby rocks in order to know where it's going. We're constantly bouncing ourselves off of other people. And so our self-image is based on that. And as a result, we become so used to that we just think we just are waiting for the next compliment from that person. And that can create a certain level of infatuation. So we went through effortless. We went through image-oriented. We went through temporary. We went through controlled by imagination. We went through selfish. And now the final, number 6, it promotes insecurity. What does that mean? Insecurity is generated by infatuation. It's something that's built into the very foundation of infatuation. When you're infatuated, you're thrilled, but not happy. Being thrilled is this superficial excitement or this giddiness. It lacks the calm, the inner comfort of happiness. The thrill of infatuation is that it seems to be accompanied by a cloud of uncertainty hovering over your head. The worry that tomorrow it's all going to wear off and he'll lose interest. I mean, how many couples have come to me to asking me to marry them and they haven't had a serious conversation? They haven't had a serious conversation because, in their words, we didn't want to ruin a good thing. Which means they literally could have been infatuated for 18 months and never had a serious conversation because they were afraid of ruining a good thing. So I'm going to end off my formal part of tonight by asking you a question. Do you think that infatuation can lead to love? Think about it a second. If you want, you can write it in the comments. Do you think that infatuation can lead to love? So I'm getting a lot of yes. Yes, 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 yes. So for those of you who have answered, I like the possibly. Exactly, possibly. How do I know? I can't make I'm like a Facebook maybe. You know, I can't make the yes or the no. But today they changed it. It's not Facebook maybe anymore. It's interested, right? I don't have to say yes or no. I can just be interested. Somebody else says, it might be one of the steps towards love, or it can happen. Dreams can come true. You need to be infatuated at least a bit in order to say yes. Okay, it's a stepping stone. Interesting. Not really, because people don't change. There you go. Here's what I think. And one of the reasons why I've been talking more and more about infatuation, because without fail, if I bring up infatuation, the first question I get is, can infatuation lead to love? Now, although for some of you who said yes there, it is true that infatuation can theoretically lead to love. More often than not, it doesn't. Because we don't know how to take it to the next level. We don't have the skills necessary to allow the infatuation to lead to love. There is a way to do it if you know how to do it. But the way that we get into relationships and the way that our relationships are working, it's very rare. So truth be told, that any and every dating experience is at least partially affected by infatuation. And that's why dating is so confusing. If infatuation and love had nothing to do with each other, life would be so much easier. Infatuation is really meant to be part of the spark at the beginning of the relationship. But it can be the foundation of the relationship. So if infatuation should be part of the spark at the beginning, the question is, how much, how big of a part should infatuation be? So the equation of love versus infatuation works like this. If the relationship is based on, let's say, 80% to 100% infatuation, the chances are very slim that this relationship is ever going to mature into love. There's no foundation for love. And most people in such a situation won't do the work necessary in order to build love. If, on the other hand, infatuation is kept in check, if it's only, let's say, 10 to 30%, then there's a tremendous potential for love. Why? Because when infatuation is kept in check, you are in reality. You can see the bigger picture, partly because there is a bigger picture. And it's not just what's going to happen tomorrow. So, yes, a little bit of infatuation is good, but not all infatuation. So, from my experience, I put together a number of, and I put them in your workbook there, signs that your infatuation is a problem. So, number one, these are signs to look at if your infatuation is a problem. It's become the basis for a relationship and there's nothing else there. The entire relationship is an infatuation-based relationship. Number two, you're so affected by the natural attraction that you can't see who the person really is. So you can't make a clear and responsible choice as to whether to commit. So even if it is the right person for you, you would never know it because you're probably not going to commit to that person because unless, I mean, it does happen, but it's very rare. You're gonna have a lot of second thoughts about committing. So it's not even healthy to begin with because it's not going to lead to a long-term relationship. Number three, you're infatuated with someone that you know is bad for you. So being in a relationship with them is actually self-destructive. Number four, you're involved in a relationship moving towards marriage, but you find yourself thinking about someone you've dated in the past. Or you've only known each other for a short while and the energy is already fading. And then the last one is you're wasting a tremendous amount of time being frustrated with fantasizing a life with someone you can never marry. If you have any of these, then you know that your infatuation is a problem. Now, when your infatuation is kept in check, it becomes hard for the two of you to see, if you don't keep your infatuation in check, it becomes harder for the two of you to see the bigger picture. You probably end up making unwise choices. And these choices come with a price tag, a broken heart. And the illusion and the excitement will wear off. And you're going to be left with pain and humiliation. And if you stay together, what do you have to look forward to? A dull, passionateless relationship? So if anything I've said here tonight is resonating with you, you're going to have to ask yourself a very powerful question, a question that may be really, really difficult to ask yourself. Maybe you're not even ready right now to ask yourself this question. If infatuation is part of the picture, and yet it's so tricky and so potentially destructive, how can you learn to trust yourself? Is there a way to check the love potential in a relationship early on before you invest your time and energy, your heart and soul? Is there a way to know? Is there a way to keep your infatuation in check so you can think clearly? Now, I know I gave you a lot to unpack here. One of the reasons why I'm going to send you this recording, one of the reasons why I gave you the handout is to give you the time this week to be able to really go through it and think about this. And if you're looking to build a healthy, lasting relationship, then you're going to have to ask yourself some difficult questions. And I think this is where we separate the grown-ups from the kids. I mean, someone once said that, but I really believe that there's a big difference. And what I'm going to do, actually, because as I was preparing this, I thought that there's another part to this. So I'm going to leave these questions with you this week, and next Wednesday at 8 o'clock, the same 8 o'clock Eastern time, the same time this started here, same time, same channel. I'm going to do a second half of this, which is going to be called "Are You Realistic with Your Dating?" And it's going to be a continuation. It's going to answer some of those questions, and it's going to talk about what does it mean to be realistic with dating. And with that is the end of my formal talk for tonight. And we're going to move on to questions and answers, and we'll allow you to get involved and see where this goes over the next hour.